Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the DX Mentor, Promoting Your Event or Club, Part 2. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill, AJ8B, the DX Mentor. My guests are DX gurus that we can all learn from. In this episode, we will discuss effective ways to promote your event or club using methods other than the messaging apps such as Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram. Our guests are Dave, KDV, Joe, WAGEX, and Steve, KI4KWR of Gigaparts. All three of my guests are outstanding DXers, but we're going to take a little bit of a detour today and talk about promoting your club or event. Before we get started, however, I'd like to acknowledge a significant milestone that a friend of mine achieved. Bernie W3UR reports that Jose, N4BAA, is the newest member of the DX Challenge 3000 Club and the first to achieve 3000 level in Indiana. Jose was our guest on episode 3 of the DX Mentor, All Things CQ. Congratulations to Jose. Now, let's tune into our gurus and find out what they're discussing, shall we? So I'd like to welcome you all to the latest edition of the DX Mentor podcast. And I'm particularly excited tonight because this is part 2 of our how to promote your club or your event. Part 1, we did an overview of YouTube, podcasting, Twitter, Facebook, all that other kind of stuff. And I think now on part 2, we're going to do more of a physical approach. And we've got a couple of really excellent guests, and I just can't wait to get. I always like getting through this because then when I edit it, I get to hear it all back, and heck, I end up learning twice as much. So, and I typically always go clockwise on the screen, so there's no favorites here. So our first guest, and I'll introduce you, and if you'll just tell us a little bit about what you do and your ham radio experience, that'd be great. We have Steve Molo, Kilo India 4, Kilo Whiskey Radio from Gigaparts. Steve, go ahead.
Good evening or good afternoon. Good morning, everybody, depending when you're watching this podcast. Steve Molo, I've been with Gigaparts since technically 2014. I started the Chat Expert program and then got kind of promoted at W4DXCC in 2018 to full-time in Huntsville, Alabama. I am the brand ambassador, brand manager, shows and conventions, and anything else they want to throw at me to expose Gigaparts. So you'll see me at the shows, conventions. You'll see me as Uncle Sam on the webpage for my trade-ins, and I process and do all the used and open box items in my bargain corner on the webpage.
And how long have you been a ham, Steve?
I have been a ham since 2005, but I originally got into communications, or if you want to say radio, from the Navy. Was in the Navy from 1998 to 2009 as a radioman. Made chief petty officer very early in my career. Probably knew too much that I probably should not have known. Got injured on the line of duty or in active duty. They sent me home, and here I am living the dream, working in amateur radio.
Doesn't get any better, does it?
No.
Okay. And we also have Dave Vest, KDV. Dave is one of my personal mentors. And the great thing about Dave is that when I decided to get interested in the Ohio CUSO party, like everybody else, I looked back to see, well, who's won it? And Dave won it like 6 out of the previous 7 years. So I called him and I said, hey, you don't know me, but you wouldn't mind sharing some secrets. Oh, hell yeah. Where do you want to meet breakfast at? And so he's always been like that. And thank God he's not been in the Ohio CUSO party since then. So I've done pretty well. But if he were, I'm sure I'd be knocked down whatever position I was in. So Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself and your ham radio journey.
Well, Bill, hello to you and Steve and Joe, of course. Good to be here this evening. And like you, I think I started my ham radio career at a very young age and trying to seek my dad's approval on something, right? Because always hearing, well, you're not fast enough, you're not big enough, you're not this, you're not that. So Dad was a fairly active ham, and I got interested. And I hope somewhere in some kind of way that I ended up with his approval. And I think that's what's always pushed me to do things like go for the win at the Ohio CUSO party and set the record, stuff like that. DXing to get the honor row, multi-band DXCC, things like that. But my ham radio career is so broad, it would be hard to paint it with a single brushstroke, right? Because I am interested in whether it's actually being on the air, chasing DX, contesting, vintage equipment, antennas, you name it, VHF, repeaters, all that stuff. I do a little bit of everything. I guess in some ways I'm sort of a jack of all trades in ham radio. I'm more like a utility player than an expert in any one place. But I love it. Been hamming now to be 45 years in May, and I've been active almost all of those years. And at this point, I don't see any stopping with that. And there's always new things to do and things I still haven't done in my 45 years that I'd still like to, and lots of things that interest me within the hobby.
And you had one unique year where you won the Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana QSO parties, right?
Yep. We did multi efforts on all of those, and we set scoring records in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky that year. And we were portable in Bracken County, Kentucky, on a friend of mine's farm out there. We went out there and took enough portable equipment, myself and 2 other guys, and set that record and won the multi-class in that. And then the other time we went to Switzerland County, Indiana, with a friend of mine's place there on his farm, and set up with a whole group of us. We went in there with a bunch of flip-top bags and network, computer network, 3 full stations, amplifiers, everything, and set it all up and tore it all down that night and come home. So it was like a mini DXpedition, and we handily won that one also 5 years in a row, just like Ohio.
Very cool. And he's humble, because if he weren't, he would tell you that he is a future Southwest Ohio DX Association president. So the other guy we have with us is we have Joe, WAGEX, and Joe's been a regular with us, and I appreciate his wisdom and guidance. But Joe, a little bit about yourself, your station, and your history.
Well, I've been an amateur 53 years. I'm retired now. Have been retired for a few years, and always been a DXer ever since I got started years ago as a technician on 6 meters. I just love DXing, and I'm on the radio every day. You might really consider me a professional ham, because there's not a day go by that I'm not on the 2 gray lines. I just love DXing. Been on several DXpeditions, but I had to give all that up because just too old to do the work like we used to be able to do. So that's pretty much my history, I guess, Bill.
Okay. Well,
Make it
thank
short
you all
and
for
sweet.
well, thank you all for taking time to be with us. The last week's edition, we talked to Kate Evans about social media and the best ways to promote your event. And at that time, we were focusing really on I'll call non or messaging apps. So Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I know I'm missing a couple, but that's where our focus was. And if you wanted to use those, what was the best way to use them and stuff like that. At SEDCO last September, Steve and I had an interesting conversation, because we were talking about Gigaparts, and I'm always curious about e-marketing and stuff. And Steve said, and certainly correct me, Steve, but you said one of your guys' most effective methods is email, right? So can you tell us about that a little bit, and how do you, what content do you put in there, and how do you gather your email addresses, et cetera?
So how we get our email addresses, I'm going to get this started again. How we get our email addresses, we do a sweepstakes. We have been doing sweepstakes probably close to 10 plus years. So when you go in for the newsletter, or not for the newsletter, for the sweepstakes, we need your name, your call sign, your email address, and a phone number, because if you win, I got to call you to say, hey, you just won our latest sweepstakes. In that, if you're not already in our newsletter, it'll ask if you want to join our newsletter. We also have a link on the webpage for the newsletter to add, if you want to add your email address. That's how we got the initial base. We're currently sitting at a very high 5-digit, six-digit, it goes out every Friday, our normal weekly email blast. So it goes out in several chunks, of this group, this group, this group, this group. What we've done lately within the last 6 months is, all right, who's clicking, who's not? And is there a secret sauce to it? Of course, who's clicking on what? So then we tried one strategy of we'll send to this group and not necessarily this group. Then we did a twofold and did multiple newsletters for the same week, one with images, one with no images. And it's amazing testing little things, just doing that, what we can gain on the clicks and what people want. Competitors, we're all on social media in some capacity, and looking at the competitors and, talking in our marketing meetings, it's like, okay, they do this, we do this, we got to play nice, and we all play nice. We all get along. Do we have our own little rivalry, competitive, being competitors? Absolutely. There's no question on that. Would you really want to put, us and the, other two key players next to each other at Dayton? Absolutely not. That it would just be like a bidding war more than likely for certain items. So that won't ever happen. It's amazing, I'll say in the last 4 years of, having a deeper impact in the newsletter on, all right, let's put in, like when we put my little, if you've never seen it, go to gigaparts.com and just put in my last name, MOLO, and you'll see my little bargain bin page, which is basically all of my stuff, my open box, used, trade-ins, what have you. And it started out as just me in our retail store in Huntsville losing my mind and turned into a cartoon. That first post had almost 20,000 clicks, not just from the newsletter, but people forwarded to their friends. Then it went to the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, QRZ. I probably got more hits on QRZ from that one little crazy picture of me just looking crazy and the Uncle Sam trade-in on Memorial Day weekend of 2019. Went on vacation, or a little mini vacation, to come back to close to 300 trade-in requests off of one picture of me dressed as Uncle Sam, pointing my finger, I want your trade-in. It's the little things, and I'm sure the other, everybody looks at us like, what are these guys doing? But we dare to be different. We have to be professional, but we dare to be different.
So Dave, you were in charge of the Milford Amateur Radio Club Hamfest, which is a really good sized regional hamfest here in Southwest Ohio. And then you were part of the team that migrated to the Greater Cincinnati Hamfest. What did you find to be an effective way to get the word out?
Well, I'm from the old school, so I'm not a social media keyboard warrior or any of that stuff by no means. And I remember drawing on all my experiences, all the hamfests that I've been to as a kid, been drug all over the Midwest with my dad, going to shows and listening to my dad and his comments all those years and everything, about you got to give the people what they want, right? So you have to have a decent show, but it helps to know a lot of people, and you have to kinder or build those relationships. And you have to remind folks when you see them at other shows and other events, and when you talk to them, hey, don't forget the Hamfest is coming up. I expect to see you there. And so what I found is a lot of it I drew off of my own personal relationships with folks and other clubs and things like that, going, I challenge you to come to our Hamfest, but even more so, I challenge you to bring a friend. And, you need to talk about, do you have excess gear? You need to bring it out and put it in our boneyard, right?
Yep.
So was always my take, was to get out and talk to people at every Hamfest I went to, remind them, hey, don't forget we have a show. Yep, paper flyers and all that stuff is great, but from the old school, I still believe people like to be personally invited. And that's what I found, that we grew our Ham Fest. We lost some momentum in the last several years due to COVID and all that. I think that happened to a lot of shows. But last year we had a little bit of a backup upswing. We also moved the date to get it further away from Hamvention and put it at the end of summer, which I think probably helped us. When I first got involved with the Ham Fest, we were probably about 250, maybe 300 tops. And last year we were just a little over 500. So our numbers are coming back up. We also looked at how do we get to a better venue, because we had it at a local church here for years and years. And we decided that they really didn't have the facility and stuff that we needed. And so that's when we moved out to the local fairgrounds, which I still think was probably one of our best moves. It gave us a lot more indoor space, a lot more outdoor space. Plus it gave us a secured date. As long as we renew it the week after the Ham Fest, we can always have that date. Where when you're dealing with churches, stuff like that, you can be pushed out for a wedding or another event, just even overnight, 24 hours notice. And, that could absolutely just kill your Ham Fest. We had tried mailings and stuff like that, but we figured out that we weren't getting the bang for the buck. But the last time we did mailings, it was over $500. So that was about 20%, 25% of our total profits right from the bottom line. And we didn't feel we were really gaining anything from direct mailings. One of the guys in the club built us a application to mine email addresses for all the local zip codes within 100 miles of our base out of QRZ. And so we did a giant email campaign based off of those emails that we sent out. And we think that probably had as much return or more than our actual US post office mailings would. And then a lot of us, just like I said, is get the word out, right? Get people, talk to people, visit people, go to club meetings. The other thing that I did several years ago was I started inviting local clubs to our Ham Fest. In fact, I think Southwest Ohio DX Association come to our Ham Fest because I invited them personally and gave them a free table and said, hey, here's your free table. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you can do, whatever. And we did that with several clubs, with the hope being that, okay, if we get one member to come, maybe they bring a friend, 2, 3, or 5 or whatever. And that helps with the crowd, gets more interest, and then more people there, more flea market, more tables. Because the thing you don't want to hear at the end of your Ham Fest was, the show was okay, but the building was empty, right? No, there was an awful lot of empty tables, because that will absolutely destroy your show. So I thought it was better to forego revenue and give tables away and have people there than what it was to have empty tables. So
yeah, and I know that we had a table and a lot of people stopped by, so it benefited us. Joe, you've done a ton of fundraising, you and Janet, for a lot of different DXpeditions. And I know that's different, right? Fundraising is different than promoting your event, but what was the best way that but you guys found to be effective?
Janet and I would go down through list, Bill, of clubs worldwide. Most of our fundraising was done worldwide. So it could get a little difficult, but we would pull it off and make some good money for some good DXpeditions. But we would come up with a letter. We would mail it to the local club and just hope that they would respond back. Being 80 years old, I go along with Dave's comments. I come from the old school for sure. And but then with all the new technology and FT8 and everything that we do with computers now, then I certainly see Steve's side of the point, where we need to get into social media and get the word out. And I think that's the quickest and the fastest. I don't know. It seems to be very successful for Steve. Steve, I have a follow-up question. When you send your mailings out, do you use a service like MailChimp or someone?
I'm not sure. We do use, it's not MailChimp, it's something else.
Yes,
But yes, we do use a service that, we build our newsletter, gets scheduled, and then it sends it out in chunks. I guess they probably got to break it down to like every couple thousand email addresses, because it probably would kill some kind of mail server setup if you try to do the whole list at one time.
sure.
So I know like some Fridays I'll get it at 11 a.m. I've got it sometimes at 8 p.m., right at the time of a Huntsville club meeting. So it's like, I know it's in it because I helped build it. But, there's times where my dad will be like, I haven't received my weekly copy to see my kid. Did you send something? It's like, you're somewhere in the mix of the thousands and thousands of emails.
So
I do a 60-meter newsletter. This might be off the subject a bit, Bill, but my 60-meter newsletter, we send out to about 1,500 people worldwide. And we use one of the services, but we can dump the whole list at one time.
What's really surprising is, if you go to the web page and you click on one of the tabs on the top, it says weekly specials. It's everything there for the people that do not want to get that email. And, I don't know the exact metrics of the clicks, but I know the conversion is there of people do click on the links on the web page also. So it's not just the newsletter where we're gaining clicks. We're getting them on the web page via that weekly special link.
Well, one point I think you would all agree on. We did a presentation on the QSO Today Expo 2 years ago about social media, and then this summer, Joe and I have been doing a lot of trying to contact other clubs and tell them about programs and stuff we have on. And I can't tell you how many websites I've gone to where there's no contact information, or you go to the bottom and it's copyright 2013 or something. And it's kind of like, if you're not going to keep it up to date, you're better off shutting it down. Because I look at it and I think, okay, you guys aren't really serious about this. So if anybody's listening, take a look at your website, and if it's not up to date, bring it up to date, because you're losing a lot of traffic. And you have a website for a reason, right? So it's either to attract new members, or it's to have specials, or it's to allow people to order product, whatever it happens to be, but you need to have it updated. So Dave, what's your experience been? I mean, do you do a lot of, do you go out and you just randomly search for clubs and other information? When you're trying to resolve a problem, or you're trying to find out about a club or something, is the website of any value to you, or Facebook, or how do you go out and try to get information about other clubs?
Well, just like that, I would, what I found, Bill, when I was putting my list together, when I was running the Cincinnati Hamfest and so forth, and I was trying to find contacts for these other clubs to offer them a free table or whatever, it really become a problem, right? Because like you said, the website was out of date, or they had an email for somebody that was no longer associated with the club, or you'd send the email and it would bounce back to you. And so I literally started going through my own personal Rolodex, finding people I knew that used to be affiliated with these different clubs and so forth, and said, hey, who's your president? Do you have any contact information for him, and so forth, and literally played detective to track him down to make the offer. Here I'm trying to give you something and I don't even have anybody to give it to. We had that same discussion with us, and why if you go out and look at the Milford Club at our website today, you'll find one of the most dynamic, and I'm a little partial, but one of the best websites for club that you'll find in Ohio, in my opinion. And our guy that does our webpage keeps it up to date. It's got new information on there, posted almost weekly. It is very current, as long as we also have the CincinnatiHamfest.org website, which is also up to date with pertinent information, with stuff live about this year's Hamfest and so forth, because that's your marketing tool, right? That's your face. That's what people in today's world, that's the first place they're going to go look, trying to find information. So we got all our contact information out there. It's current. There's contact forms and all that. But for me, being that I've been in Southwest Ohio for so long and so active, I know almost all the clubs and everything here and people in them, right? So that was a big help in trying to find people in these clubs. But like you, what I found with their websites, most of them were out of date, maybe, several years out of date.
Yes,
And they hadn't changed anything on them. And I'm like, well, this is of no benefit whatsoever. How do you attract new members with, data that's, 10 years old?
Right.
And most of the people you mentioned on here, um, some of them have, it's a shame, but some of them have went SK, they're selling keys now and they're still got their contact information posted out there as the, officer or whatever. And so it's really sad, but I think that in our world and the ham population, they don't understand, even though I'm not a social media guy, I understand marketing a little bit and how important that is to have it right. And when you don't have it right, and you don't represent your organization or somewhere, and, as a friend of mine would say, it's like, okay, 1993 called, GeoCities wants their website back.
yeah,
You can't be that, right? You have to have, it has to be dynamic, it has to be interesting, it has to have current facts, it has to have current information. And you also don't want to have it so long that people get bored reading the material, right? You want quick hits and then places they can go to get additional detail if they want it.
GeoCities, you caught me on that one.
Yeah, there you go. So you
See,
never
that's
know
the
what I'm
problem.
going to say, right?
No. So
that's the
Steve,
problem Jen
go
and I
ahead.
had when we was doing our fundraising, that the websites, and I guess I'm repeating here, but they were just unbelievably out of sight. There was no addresses, no phone numbers. It was very, very, very frustrating to come up with someone in the club, and then you would, excuse me, send it to somebody. Well, he or she is no longer in the club. So you have these emails going back and forth. Well, could you tell me who's your president?
Right.
And then we finally, after a couple of days, get a hold of somebody that was really worthwhile.
So one thing that Kate has passed along last podcast we had was take your main contact information and put it in the footer. And that way, no matter what page they're on, the information's there. I thought that was pretty smart. Excuse me. So Steve, obviously there's more than you behind the scenes, right, at Gigaparts. So you've got this big email machine and you've got a really big active website. How do you guys manage so that you're not, I mean, I guess there would be you don't want to be stale, but you don't want to be so redundant that, oh yeah, I've seen this already, I'm not interested. So how do you manage all that information?
A lot of it with, 15,000 active SKUs. Now, the big thing that I always have to say at Hamfest in Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi is, yes, we are a technology superstore. So we're not just doing amateur radio. Our retail store here in Huntsville is computers. We have the business to business side. We're growing little, chunks at a time, like our Explorer brand. We have our own masts and tripods. We have the stuff for the RV, campers that have, the satellite dish, Starlink. We've started our own little niche, and then the craziest thing that we jumped into was the Overland Expos. It was something, let's bring the Explorer brand stuff with us, stuff that the Overland people could use. So that's another branch. Now, throwing that into all the whole marketing scheme, I try to tailor and suggest with the other brand managers and sales team. All right, we've got, let's say, field day. Why during field day time, why would I show off computers? Why would I show off masts and tripods, which, yes, you can use for field day for that portable setup. But why would we try to promote something that has nothing to do with an upcoming event? It's like, why would I sell bug spray for winter field day?
Right.
Yes, there's areas that are, Florida, Texas that, potentially could, have the need for bug spray, but you have to market your things to the current contest calendar season. You know, if I kept throwing out the same deal on Hustler antennas every month, you're not going to click. You know, coax, all right, let's throw something with coax because everybody needs coax. You know, if you don't need coax, okay, maybe you have hardline. You know, some of us have used Heliax or, you know, good hardline, so we don't need it. But you never know when you may have to get that, you know, jumper that goes from your lightning arrestor to the shack. You know, you have to, you know, we have to juggle our catalog, which is not on paper, it is all the web page. So there's times where, you know, I might say, let's show off our Zero PCs since we build our own PCs. Well, that's not for the hams. What about FT8? You know, Joe mentioned FT8. You know, yes, we have our gamers and our esports, you know, groups, but everybody could use one of our Zero PCs for the integration in their shack. Oh, that you make a point there. Okay. You know, I don't want to keep hitting you with the same thing all the time. So, all right, camping starting, let's do solar panels. Since we offer solar panels, you need a solar controller. Why would I not, you know, say, hey, here's our solar panels, but not offer you the solar controller you need for your battery? You just can't plug them together. It ain't going to play nice.
Yeah, so you got to be careful about what you're doing there. So I will tell you, one of the things that strikes me is if I say the name Tim Duffy or K3LR, who do you think of, right? DX Engineering.
Absolutely.
And if I say Ray Novak, who do you think of?
ICOM.
ICOM, right? And I will tell you, Steve, I've been to so many Hamfests where you've been. I think of, well, Steve, that's the Gigaparts guy. So I do think, and I guess I'm supporting what Dave said earlier, is that face recognition and that name recognition, you just can't beat that. And I can't tell you how many people, when I was following Dave around my very first Milford Hamfest, everybody knew him. And it was because they'd done business with him and he'd been there and he'd been around it. And I thought that was terrific. You know, everybody knew him and knew who to go to for questions, whether he was in charge of the Hamfest or not. And I'm finding the same thing out with Joe. He's connected with so many DXers that all they have to do is say, you remember the ham that put the nun's habit on at the DX dinner? Oh yeah, that's WAGEX. I know that guy. So
No, you hit the nail on the head because, you know, I'm not no superstar DXpeditioner. I'm no, you know, I'm not a Craig Thompson. I'm not a Jerry Rosalius. You know, names of DXpeditioners and big contesters that, you know, I got introduced to at Sedco, Dayton, and other events. It's that, you know, Dave is well known in, you know, his area of Ohio. Joe, you know, when I say Pater down here, they're like, you know Joe Pater? I'm in Alabama and people know Joe Pater. And one of the things that my wife, you know, is our accountant at Gigaparts, what she saw in the last 4 years alone was we can walk into the room and it's like, that's Steve from Gigaparts, just like Tim Duffy with DX Engineering. He can walk through the door. That's Tim Duffy from DX Engineering. Ray Novak, same way. John Kruk. And it really surprised me for the last, with the pandemic up to now, where I'd be out in town here in Huntsville. And yes, you know, we got a lot more than just, you know, rockets here now. And we'll be at the Space and Rocket Center for just a little event for the Ham Radio Club. You're Steve from Gigaparts. I'm not even wearing a shirt. And it's like, how do you know me? Or I'll be shopping at Publix, the supermarket. You're the guy from Gigaparts on YouTube. And it's like, sometimes it's like, are you stalking me? How do you know me? And they're like, well, I get your email. I shop at the store. Or the crazy one right now is there is a standee sign that we have in the store for my bargain corners. I use it at Huntsville for stuff that I'm, my bargain corner that I bring to the show. It's set up in the store, and they're like, I recognize you from somewhere. And I'm like, do you shop at Gigaparts? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not standing in the corner going like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Normally, if somebody does that to me, they recognize me from a poster on the post office wall. So that's usually not a good thing. So Dave, if I were to call you, you don't know me, and I'm saying, hey, look, I'm in Ashland, Kentucky, and I'd like to help promote our regional Hamfest. What would you tell me?
Well, if you
Or
called me
maybe it's not a Hamfest, it's just a club event or something.
Well, if you called me from Ashland, I'd probably know most of the hams there since that's where I
okay.
grew up, right?
Okay.
So, I would say, well, okay, tell me about your event. Tell me about what you're wanting to achieve with this event. What's your core, right? What's your mission for the event? And then, okay, your time and date. What's you're offering? What are you going to be? You've got to make it about the patrons. You can't make it about you. It's got to be about those people you want to come through the door and hand you $5, $10 admission or whatever it is, right? So you got to offer them something. What are you going to offer? So I'd be like, okay, first thing you need to do is you got to figure out, you got to have somebody manage it, right? That's going to be willing to go out and talk to other clubs and talk to other things. And maybe in today's world, it's a lot easier because you don't have to do physical visits. You can literally do the, Zoom or Medium Online or, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, those kind of things. I'd say, okay, what about, maybe I would arrange, I'd go down and maybe do a visit with them, depending on what the event is. And if it's at a venue, look at the venue and give them some ideas about, if I was setting this up, here's what I would do. Here's the things, the absolute 5 things that you have to do to be ready, right? And give them the list of like, here's the things you need. You got to have, your tickets, your time, your workers. You got to have your volunteers, and they've got to be committed to the day of the show, whatever it is. Presentations. What's your primary presentations, and do you have a backup plan? And do you have a plan in case something goes wrong, right? So I would talk them through all the things, lessons, life lessons that I learned by doing events. I mean, to give you an idea, you'll probably remember years ago, I think you were with us. We went out to Hillsboro to a meeting to talk about the W8DXCC and the Hamfest. And that was just one event that you went with me. There were several of those that I went to with just talking about our Hamfest, to go out and generate some energy, right? And we gave away some free tickets and stuff that night to get them there. So, but yeah, if somebody called me and said, hey, I need your help, or what can you tell me? I just run down the list of stuff that I did and things that we learned and try to get them to pitfalls that they could avoid. And what the absolute things are you have to have when you get ready to do this, if you want to be successful.
I'll tell you a funny story. It just went through my head. When I was just a lad, like 8 or 9 years old, my father used to take me to the Cincinnati Hamfest at Stricker's Grove. And
I remember it. Yeah.
There's 2 things that that trigger memory. The ham that he used to meet, his nickname was Blackie. Blackie smoked a cigar. And there's sometimes when I get a whiff of cigar smoke, it takes me back, 45 years. I guess more than that now, 55 years. But anyway, and the second was they used to have these remote control planes, and they would do the remote control plane exhibition. And every time I hear that whining in the air, I remember that too. So, I mean, there was a lot to reflect back on. I enjoyed it, and I remember those things. So. Steve, same question. Somebody's going to call you up, and they're not calling you to look for a handout from Gigaparts. They're just saying, hey, how can I kick this? We got a big fundraiser, or we got a big meeting, or we're doing a local Hamfest.
I get that every day when it comes to the donation requests. And there's nothing, we can't help everybody. I think one of the biggest outreach things that works for me is I can give you a coupon code for the weekend because we can track that through the marketing metrics. My big thing is Hamfest pricing on door prizes. You know, three of us go to the same convention every year, at least two of us, but definitely, I try to, and it's some of it is marketing based, it's almost like that click thing. The more you hear the same name, over and over again. But at the same token, I gotta let the others have an opportunity. So I always offer, I can give you Hamfest pricing on Yaesu radios. That is one of my biggest. Oh, you can. So that is one of the biggest ones is I'm on a Zoom call. I can do that.
Okay.
But helping people out, I can get your message out. The biggest problem, and we did this one time and it turned into a flaming mess, is they said, hey, can you put out our Hamfest in your newsletter? The only problem is our newsletter goes out worldwide. It's not just US. We do have that international customer base. We can send out a tailored one for your area, but there might be a little bit of a cost to it because it does cost money to send out, anything marketing related. So I try to send it out through the internal list I have of people. Hey, I'll do a little bit of a mail merge. Hey, there's a Hamfest coming in this area. Go and support it. However, all the Hamfest, I get more out of going to the three major shows than the smaller shows anymore. And if you don't offer, and this is, like it's like Dave said about the free tables for the clubs. It gets very expensive for a lot of these shows. Then it's, and then I've got to play that juggle. I don't make this much, I got to make money on this. And the smaller Hamfests here, and I call it the 4-hour circle of Alabama. We just had a recent Hamfest. The guy wanted me to come up there. Hey, bring your whole store. I can't bring the whole store.
Right.
And well, can you make a presence? I can make a presence. But our thing is e-commerce. We are online, Amazon, eBay, and everywhere, every other platform possible we are in. So for some of us to support the smaller shows, that means I have to take inventory out of the main system that could potentially sell online. Then take it to the show, and let's say it does not sell. Then it's got to go back in the system where it could have sold. So I used Chattanooga Hamfest last year. That guy, he begged me, please just bring something. I don't care if you set up a backdrop, similar to what I do at Sedco every year. Just hand out flyers. Even better, I'll bring the QRZ1. I brought that, and on the other side was a smaller competitor from the Chattanooga area, and he seemed upset. I walked over and said, look, I'm not here selling any of what you're selling. I'm selling my own branded product because I don't want to hurt your pocket. But I'm starting to see more and more Hamfests that, the wife and I go to. A lot less of the smaller dealers are coming because they just can't support it.
It's tough.
It is getting very tough. And, the Hamfest up in Sevierville, Pigeon Forge area was last weekend. Every year we provide the radios. And I'll probably get an email sometime this week or next week to get radios for next year, or if they do a fall show like they did last year, the same weekend as Sedco. And they get some vendors in there, but do they wish they could have, Wireman, Gold Medal Ideas? I'm throwing out the common, some mom and pop that you see at the larger shows. I see it going away, and I don't want to see Hamfest going away.
Right.
but I can only do so much being in the e-commerce platforms of supporting the smaller shows. And the only way really is doing special pricing on door prizes when
Okay.
we can, when the availability is there. And that is the biggest challenge.
Do you still have the program where every March you give a podcast host a a no tune amplifier to try out for a year? I didn't know if you were still running that or Joe, I think you were making a couple notes there.
Well, I got a question for both Dave and Steve. So we'll start with Dave. The ARL, they do it at Setco at W4DXCC, but our leader down there, he gets a list, Dave, from the league, and then he mails that out, a flyer to all those people. So he may get a list for half of the state, for example. And then he'll send them a flyer. We're having a W4DXC convention. So have you ever done anything like that in the Cincinnati area?
Yes, we have done that in the past, Joe, where we use the ARL service, which will send you the listing of all the names and everybody in that area. But then you come down to, that's a mass mailing, right? And the
Yes.
price of doing the mailing will eat into your bottom line this day and time to where it's a double-digit loss on your revenue, right? Of what you're going to bring in through the gate. When you're running a small regional ham fest like we are, we do okay for ourselves, but when you have a $500-600 mailing cost from the time you buy the printing, the postage, and all that, that's just more than we can absorb, right? Because that's one less prize we're going to give away, or maybe it's not as good a facility that we're going to rent, or maybe we're not going to have some of the nicer customer amenities that we might be able to have with that money, right? So that's a great program, and the league will still do that. But for us, we found that it was just too costly for us to take advantage of it.
Sure. Steve, you have any follow-up questions on that or answers?
I don't want to speak for Huntsville Hamfest. I'm just a vendor there with my, as I call it, the Giga Village. We basically, have our little village because it's our home show. I know we've tried using the ARRL list, and there's a challenge when you have hams that don't want to spend the $49 a year to be a member, and trust me, everybody's got their personal feelings about the league. I've got my pros, I've got my cons, like I'm sure everybody else does. But when I did that once for, hey, I'm going to be going to the Birmingham Ham Fest, and I sent that out, I had more bounce backs than anything else. So I agree with Dave when it comes to word of mouth, going to the club meetings, reaching out. One of the benefits I have here is, Bill Bubba Bussey from the Rick and Bubba show. That's, simulcasted and streamed, throughout, the South on the radio, YouTube, and I think some podcast platforms. When he says, I'm going to be at Gigaparts for Ham Radio Day, or I'm doing ham radio this weekend in Dayton, Orlando, it's like people follow him. So, and that's because they just want to meet the guy that's, on the radio for 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. But that, the league list is great. Even with me being, a district emergency coordinator here in Northern Alabama, the list that I have for my 9 counties, I sent out a mass email at the end of the year to please, consider participating in Aries. And I had close to 30% bounce back of email. Go to call them, lines disconnected, or even worse, they're a silent key.
Yeah.
And the wife, and it's like, I am so sorry. You are on a list that was provided to me by the Amateur Radio Relay League. And I know that is not one thing that, they thought of at that time oh, we got to get him off this list. He is passed.
Yes,
Yeah, it's tough. And and to your point too, heck, even in our club of 80 some members, there's a lot of guys that will call up and say, I haven't gotten a newsletter in 3 months. It's like, well, what email address do you have? Well, that's not what we have on file.
Yes.
So, people don't do a good job of keeping up their own information. So, one thing I'm curious about, and really from all three of you, this coming weekend, I guess it'll be after this is aired perhaps, but is the QSO Today Virtual Ham Fest, right? So it's like a ham fest under a single pane of glass. I've attended for a couple of years. I've never been one for big crowds. So for me, it's fun. And I like some of the presentations, but at the same time, it's not the same as the feel of being there, with a bunch of folks. So do you think that's going to change the way Hamfest and club events and even vendors are going to approach this whole amateur radio market? Joe, what do you think?
well, probably will. I've never been involved in that, Bill, so I might be a bad one to really comment. But since everything is going virtual, I would say that it would hurt local ham fest. But I've never been involved, so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Dave?
I'm like Joe. I've never been involved with it. I think I attended the first year that Eric put it on. I attended a few forums, but then I found myself drifting off and headed over the 20 meters and getting involved in some contest for the rest of the day. I couldn't stay focused because I'm like, unlike you, I like the big crowd. I like the big group. I like to watch what's going on around the room. I like the energy that kind of thing presents in person kind of deal. And at a virtual event, you can't look under the tables in the junk boxes to find that one that one piece you're looking for, right?
Right.
So I think it's great. It serves a purpose, and they're probably successful because there's a very small percentage. There's a larger percentage of hams that are loners, and they want to do stuff remote and go in and out when they feel like it, versus those that join. If there were more hams that joined, our clubs wouldn't be suffering, right? Our ham fest wouldn't be suffering. But we're the ones that are out here and join a club, or maybe 2 or 3 clubs, and that we are going to ham fest and other events and stuff like that. We're the exceptions, in my opinion, to the normal ham radio operator. The normal ham's a guy that he doesn't really get out, right? If I can get on with my computer, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think they had an impact. The other thing is that the average age of ham radio is getting older. So, and a lot of the guys that are coming in, they don't want to do the work to put on the physical shows, right? Because it's a lot of effort, right? It takes a lot of time, maybe not physically strength, but it takes a lot of time mentally, and a lot of phone calls, a lot of pen pushing, doing visits, doing other stuff to make it successful, right? To get everything to line up at the right time. And most people don't want to put that much time into something that they're not going to make anything for, right?
Yep.
So, and that's hurt our, in-person events, if you would. But I think the computer events, computerized virtualization events, virtual events are getting bigger and bigger. I mean, we're not only seeing it in ham radio. I mean, look at our workplace, how it's changed over the last several years. I mean, we used to have, 2 or 3 in-person meetings a year, right? Where we had to go to, and they brought all the managers in. Now they do a one-day virtual, got to be online, on camera, and all this stuff all day. And it's changed throughout the whole thing. So as long as they don't get us to where we start virtually DXing, I'm okay.
Well, Joe and I had a chance to talk to Eric 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And I got a sense that this next event is pretty critical, because he had great numbers the first year. And he admitted he had some challenges, but because of COVID, he had some great numbers. Then the second year, still COVID-like, right? There was still some issues, and a lot of the technical issues were ironed out. But I think, Joe, if I recall, he said it dropped a little bit. And then this year, he seemed a little concerned, as anyone would be taking on a big venture. But there's the expeditions are now happening, and people are traveling and moving and going places. And his event is coming up this weekend, so I hope he does well. I don't want him to put Hamfest out of business, but I also think it's cool that he's kind of out there pushing new technologies and trying things. So Steve, what about the whole virtual Hamfest thing?
Virtual Hamfest. We had it in 2020. We were part of the 2020 initial launch with Eric. This is no bust on Eric in any way. He knew he had pains. There was a lot of growing pains to it. We felt those growing pains. I don't know if that was a factor of why platinum sponsorships and the other sponsorships are not there. It's probably costing him a decent dime to put on that virtual event. Everything does have that cost. We had to pay too. What I think, thinking back to that it was 2020.
Yeah.
That was the same weekend of the announcement of the ICOM 705. And I felt bad for Ray Novak of ICOM because people were asking so many questions that he could not answer. Ta-da, here's a render of the 705. And they gave us a platform that we had our own little chat rooms. Well, here I am with, my 3 monitors at work, my laptop to my left, my work laptop to the right, logged in various logins to see what's going on. And the worst part was vendors getting roasted by other hams, keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
And I think it just got out of hand. And when you can only do so much with a keyboard, I felt bad for ICOM and MFJ that weekend because they were getting roasted by the keyboard warriors.
Yeah, I have to admit, having presented and then hung around for a Q&A, it's a lot different standing at SEDCO and seeing 100 people in front of you. They're a lot less likely to ask some irritating or out of line question than they would be when they're a lot braver behind a keyboard, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you hit a good nerve with me on that. There's the way that we speak to customers on the phone, and then it's like it's well known, at work. You send Steve to a show, you're going to get the real responses, not this script. And they know it. They know I am unfiltered. You come to me with a complaint. Well, let's go look it up. All of a sudden, well, no, it's not really a complaint. Then why are you coming, come on now.
Yeah.
You got me now. What is your issue? And half the time it's not an issue. They think they're all high and mighty when they have that keyboard. They're not.
Yeah.
I can, if I remember the guy's call sign last year, he made fun of this on my head, this little gray patch on my head in a video I did in the store. And I recognized his little logo on Facebook. And I said, hey, I got my hair fixed. Is it better now? And I kind of got him at Orlando. And his wife's like, this is the guy you roasted on Facebook that all the club members, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I didn't mean to start something at Orlando, but gotcha, keyboard warrior.
Yeah, there's an awkward moment, right? So I have covered everything on my list. And again, the intent was someone could tune in and listen to some of the best ways that we used to promote and we still promote. So I'd like to go one more time and see what your thoughts are, if I missed anything or something you want to stress. I will tell you the common theme, and I'm surprised at this. The common theme from last episode with Kate telling us all about YouTube and social marketing, e-marketing, and what you guys have talked about tonight, it really comes down to the personality. It comes down to the one-on-one, whether it's through a post that you're directing at someone or a group of individuals you're marketing to, or it's a YouTube video, or it's us in person. It still comes down to there's a human interest there and things that people want to find out about you, right? So that kind of makes me feel good about all this, because it doesn't matter what kind of technology we're wrapping around this. It still comes down to, do I know that guy? And he seems honest to me and I'd like to do business with him, right? So take a minute, and if you can think of anything that we didn't cover or you wanted to bring up, we can do that now. Dave, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I don't have any additional, Bill. Like I said, it's been an interesting discussion for sure. And at the end of the day, yeah, we're all hams, we're all active. Some of us chase DX, some of us do other stuff. But at the end of the day, we're in the people business, right? And trying to push our name out there, our recognition, whether our event or what have you. And a lot of the success of an event comes down and based on the person that's representing it. And if you have the wrong reputation and stuff out there, people are going to assume that your event is also bad. So the best thing to do is you treat people the way that you want to be treated, and you you're positive about the things that you represent, and you believe in good faith of what you're telling people is the right thing, and represent the event or whatever it might be the best of your ability, you'll be successful every time. It's not always about the dollars and cents. It's about, did you make the people that came to your event, did they feel like they left fulfilled with something? So that's my 2 cents.
And I will tell you, to support what you said earlier, when you were with you're still at the Milford Club, but you were the only club that offered us a table to come and set up, and you were the only one that sent us information every year that we would pass out to our members. And I've been surprised at how many other clubs there are around us that either don't take the time to do that. Maybe they don't know who we are, but they could look us up. So hats off to you guys for doing that. That clearly brought some folks out. So Joe, any parting thoughts here?
Yeah, I need to follow up with Dave. I'm sort of like Dave in a lot of ways, but I'm a very person guy. I like to go up and shake hands with someone, tell them what I've got to sell, and I'm quite familiar with the digital world. And I'm really surprised at myself that I really like this FT8, and I don't know that there's anything personal about it. Where when we was talking on sideband, when I go over to sideband, you can hear the guy. Unfortunately, we can't see him, but I just like that personal contact. I've always been that way. In the businesses that I run, I think part of our success was exactly what Dave is saying, and Steve, that personal contact is hard to beat.
So you do like FT8?
I do like FT8 now. I can't hear hardly and I can't see, so I can manage this keyboard, Steve.
But you do know, if you went back to RTTY, you could send those images of yourself like we used to do how many years ago, right? So you could do that. Well, Steve, wrap it up for us, buddy.
Wrap it up. I agree 100% about the face-to-face. In just my presence in the hobby, working at Gigaparts, I don't want to say that I am the reason why Gigaparts has grown exposure-wise, but I will have to say it is. When your e-commerce business, in our case, is strictly online, you go to the shows, but you don't get your name out there. They just, oh, you're just another vendor at the show. You got to go shit, it's like Joe. The first time I met Joe at Sedco, he was in my face, welcome, come learn. If you have any questions, ask. And, I push Sedco down here, so much because, not only because of the boot camp, but that Saturday presence. And Bill, you saw it last year. We have fun, but if that person, every year they seem to gain new hams, new people to the convention, but not once has anybody belittled. We might pull you out and take you down the hall to the radio room. We're not trying to take you away from learning. We want you to walk away understanding what you're learning. In my case, I want to make sure you fully understand what you're making that purchase, and is this what you need that you don't get necessarily online. I can give you that real world experience. Joe can give you, the real world experience of a DXpedition. You can't get that through online. Sometimes you can by watching a video, but some people learn online, some people learn books. But I think a lot of people in this hobby, they need that face-to-face interaction.
Mhm.
And I think that is one thing that has grown our business, is that face-to-face interaction of, what's that guy from Gigaparts? He's right there. I get more fingers pointed at me and people coming up to say, hey, it's great to see you here. And I probably shake more hands at Dayton than doing transactions. And, going to the DX dinner, that wasn't done in the past. Going to, the other dinners, that wasn't done. We were just that mom and pop, we're set up from 9 to 5, and you don't see us until 9 o'clock the next morning.
Right.
I get out there now, and not all the time is it for Gigaparts. I want to promote the hobby, because it's like Dave said, the median age of this hobby is 67 years old, and I hate making that rib sometimes, but in 20 years I'm going to be that median age. So if we don't get the youth involved, if we don't keep people engaged, what's going to happen to this hobby, in 20 years?
Yeah, it is a concern. And that, speaking of Eric, that's always one thing he brings up on his QSO today. And everyone does voice that as an issue. So, but I'm hoping that this podcast is a step in the right direction to help people who want to learn about the hobby. I know we're really a DX tailored podcast, but anytime I can get, topic experts like y'all on here to talk about things that are still pertinent, we're a DX club trying to promote things, and we like to be a part of all these activities going on. So I really appreciate all three of you being with me tonight. It was a good solid hour of conversation and roundtable, and I got a lot out of it, and I hope you did too. And I'll put a plug in for Steve. If you haven't signed up for the Gigaparts newsletter, it's just gigaparts.com. Scroll to the bottom and put your email address in. And if we can hit 30,000, he's still thinking about that amplifier testing offer I made him. So could always be interesting. So 73, thanks for y'all, and I'll see you in the pileups very soon.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks all.
I really enjoyed that. I love reflecting back on my days with my dad and going to the ham fest that we attended. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the DX Mentor. I'd also like to thank our gurus on this episode, Dave, KDV, Joe, WAGEX, and Steve Molo, KI4KWR. I would really like to have your feedback, answer your questions, and provide help with any DX or amateur radio question or issue that you may have. If you need clarification on something or you just have a question, email me at thedxmentor@gmail.com or give me a call at 1-513-855-3980. You can also follow me on Twitter using @thedxmentor. Each episode can also be listened to in podcast form. Just search for the DX Mentor podcast in your favorite podcast app. An episode schedule and more information can be found at ajb.com/the-dx-mentor-podcast. Please drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, received recognition, or have a DX event that you'd like us to mention. We'd be happy to do that. 73 for this episode, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support.